Coming up on this week's episode of TechSnap, we've got a best of for you. It's a first for the TechSnap show. You submitted some of your favorite moments, and we'll review them, and I'll join you from time to time to have a little holiday cheer. All that and a heck of a lot more on this week's episode of TechSnap. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSnap. This is episode 194 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. This is our best of episode, and it's brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. Now, this week, we're doing something special. I want to say thank you to everybody who submitted in some of your favorite best of moments, and we kick it off this year with a bang. We go way back into the archive for one of our favorite war stories, Mr. Alan Jude's first war story on the TechSnap program.
Picture it. It's a hot Canadian wilderness August day, and Alan's got one job to do. He's got to move data centers. Lay it on us, sir.
Right. So we're moving from our current data center to a bigger one, and we decided we're going to do this over 2 consecutive weekends. So we'll move half of our gear and then move the other half after.
Sure.
Right. So we start moving the load over to the one half of our gear so that we can free up the rest. And we reconfigure our redundant router to act as the primary at the old location, and we'll move the main router to the new location.
Yeah, a nice controlled move. Hopefully minimize outages, things like that.
Yeah, and it's all going very smoothly, right? We have it all planned out. All the servers have modified running configs that are going to keep them up while we move, and they also have the boot configs are all set up for when they move, they can come back on there right away, already pre-configured.
Nice.
Right, so we got the IP addresses changed. Everything's going to go perfectly. And then I'd say it was about an hour before we were scheduled to get to the data center and start tearing things apart. The power goes out in a huge swath of the city.
No.
Yeah.
Probably because it was so hot, everybody had their AC on.
Something like that. I never did find out exactly what happened. But that's not a big problem. This is a data center, right? We have battery backups and generators, and it's all going to be fine.
Right.
Right. Actually, the power didn't go out where I live. I live on the other side of a major highway, so it's separate power grid. But anyway, I didn't know anything was wrong, but the power had gone out, and it's running out batteries. And that's fine, right? The system detects that, all right, we've been running out batteries for like 2 minutes now. The utility power doesn't appear to be coming back right away. So spool up the generator.
Yeah, you got like a system. You got a generator box that takes care of that.
Yeah, and so the generator comes online and starts generating power. Everything's going perfectly. And then it's... so the system decides, all right, let's try to switch to the generator now. And it tries, but it fails.
Uh-oh.
It doesn't get any power from the generator. So it continues on the batteries and sends out an alert and tries to keep going. And it tries the generator again. Still no power from the generator. And...
Did you know why?
No. Well, we get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
To ruin the story.
All right, I don't want to... Oh, yeah, sorry.
Anyway, after about 12 or 15 minutes, the batteries are critical and still no power from the generator. And so everything goes out.
Oh, my gosh.
So up to this point, I didn't know anything was going on. I'm just at home getting ready for this big move, right? I'm packing up toolboxes and getting all ready.
Right.
And then all of a sudden my internet at home goes out because my internet comes from the same place that the data center is, right?
Oh, no. So you're like, oh, boy.
My home internet's out. I don't know what's going on.
Your mind starts racing.
I'm like, all right, my internet's not working. Okay, call up the ISP. Why is my internet not working? It's like, we've had a power failure. I'm like, okay. And then my phone starts buzzing while I'm on the phone. I'm like, what's going on? Oh, my servers are down. I'm like, hey, why is the data center down too? This is ridiculous. It's a data center.
It's a data center.
Right? And they're like, we don't know. We're looking into it. I'm like, well, shit. So the problem with this is it takes them about half hour more to get the power back online, but they do. The problem is all of my routers and servers were all configured to, after the next reboot, switch over to the new configuration.
Oh, no.
Yes. So they all have the wrong IP addresses, and particularly the, what do you call it, directory services that we use.
Yeah, like LDAP or something?
We use something like that, and a bunch of the servers that were configured for the new data center, or the ones that were configured to stay, couldn't find the LDAP directory. So they couldn't find a bunch of the users required for some of the services.
Oh, so the services couldn't start because they couldn't authenticate.
Right. And well, more than that, it caused a giant delay while it was trying to look it up. Right? It's causing it to take like 2 minutes to give up trying to map this username to a user ID.
Massive
so while
delays.
trying to reconfigure everything's taking epic amounts of time to do it.
Oh, no, dude.
Yeah, so it took a while to get everything back online. And then we still had to pull all our gear out, do some hardware upgrades on it, and move it all to the new data center. It was a crazy...
Did it take you a bit to realize that the routers had configured over it for the other IP space? And
No,
stuff like that?
I knew right away because I configured them to do that. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The power wasn't supposed to go out. It's a data center.
Right.
What the hell?
It's funny, data center power outages tend to be a common little issue. Just little blips here and there sometimes can happen, and
Well, I remember Rackspace had a big problem with that. It was one of the first times they had such a big problem. I think in the end they had to give out millions of dollars in refunds.
whoa, really?
Yep. Because it took out like everything. It was some problem with their UPS, their battery backup system.
So
Which is the part that's supposed to keep the power on. When it failed to get the generator power. And then they had a second event like 2 days later while trying to fix it.
oh, man. Kick them while you're down.
I'll throw a link for that in there, but it was one of the first stories I did at AppFail.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
we talked a bit about how Google's, in their setup, they put a separate battery in each computer
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't have that single point of failure.
Was that episode 1 of TechSnap? We talked about that?
I think it was
so.
2 when
Two?
we talked
Okay.
about the Facebook data center design.
So you have your outage. Did you were you able to get on the road to recovery pretty quick, or what was the situation?
Yeah, it just basically delayed our move by about 2 hours while we had to scramble around and fix everything so we could move.
So why didn't the backup power work properly?
Right. So it took them about a week to finally deliver the root cause analysis, but it turns out that when the local ISP had got bought out by a big national about a year before, and they decided they weren't interested in doing data center anymore, and that's why we were moving. They had chopped down all the good transit and replaced it with cheap transit, and were kicking us out, basically. But also, they weren't keeping up the routine maintenance on the generators.
Well, because they were done with it.
They weren't interested in anymore. It turns out that the power transfer cable that goes from the generators to the battery backup banks had corroded and needed to be replaced.
Oh, that's some serious neglect.
Right. And so, the power couldn't get from the generator to the UPS battery banks, and so it couldn't be delivered to the servers.
What a stupid, well able to plan for thing to bring down your whole data center.
Yeah. And the other problem was, because they were closing off the data center, they had already scaled back the staff. So they were understaffed to deal with a catastrophic power failure like this. Right? So it took them, and they were more concerned getting all their cable customers back online than the data center.
Right.
And
So as with any good war story, Alan, did you have some lessons learned from this? Like, I know there's not a lot since it wasn't directly under your control, but you can always take away something, I figure.
But part of it was that don't change your boot configs early.
Yeah.
The whole point of having a running config and a boot config is that use the running config to test the change and make sure it works. And in case it doesn't, you can just reboot and it goes back to how it was before.
Yeah.
This is extremely important if the hardware is remote. Right?
Yes.
Because if you make a change that makes it inaccessible, you can't, you don't have physical access to fix it, right? You have to get someone to go do it. And you could be lucky that if all you have to do is get a power cycle, it's a lot easier than trying to get someone to log into a terminal with a password they're not supposed to have or something and reconfigure it.
Like I said, we went way back in the archive to find that one. And for me, it's both fun and painful to see the old production values that we had in the old show. I'm pretty happy with where we're at now. I'll tell you about something else I'm pretty happy with. That's our first sponsor, DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com, won't you? And bring this promo code of power with you, my friends. Snap December. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But DigitalOcean, it's where you got to go. It's who I go to for my back-end infrastructure all the time now. It's a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. And that really pays off because it means I can get going right away. In fact, you're going to get started in less than a minute, probably about 55 seconds or so. And pricing plans, they start only $5 a month. Well, remember, I told you about our promo code of power, Snap December. Well, that promo code of power will get you a $10 credit. $5 for a rig means 2 months, no money out of your pocket. It's going to get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte. A freaking terabyte of transfer. And DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. I have droplets in San Francisco and New York, and I'm thinking about adding a droplet to London just so that way I can be like, yeah, man, I got geodiversity. But really, it's mostly because for one of the things I'm using my DigitalOcean droplets for is to synchronize files with Unfilter supporters, and if it's regionally closer, that means higher transfer rates for them. One of my favorite things about DigitalOcean is how solid their interface is. It's truly the trendsetter. Nobody beats DigitalOcean. Their interface is simple and intuitive, yet extremely powerful. You can take snapshots, do DNS management. You can redeploy rigs. You get HTML access to the console. It's really, really slick. Go over there just to try it out, if nothing else, over at DigitalOcean.com. Remember, we've got that promo code of power, Snap December, when you check out. And, I talk about their straightforward API, how it lets you replicate a lot of the functionality on a much larger scale. You can also just take advantage of some of the things the community's already created, like this DigitalOcean Puppet module. It's a Puppet module which provides a type and provider to allow managing droplets with Puppet. I've mentioned this before in the past, but I want you to kind of think about the value of DigitalOcean combined with the ability to snap it into your existing management infrastructure. Wow, that's powerful. Off-site uses, off-site backup, emergency scaling, and DigitalOcean even has hourly pricing. Go over to DigitalOcean.com right now. Use our promo code SNAPDecember, get the $10 credit, and also check out some of their tutorials. I know you TechSnap listeners out there are experts. You might be able to write something up for DigitalOcean and get paid money. In fact, DigitalOcean is willing to pay up to $200. $200 for a tutorial. They have editing staff that will work with you. All right, next up is a story that honestly surprised me at its scale. It seems to be one of your favorites, too. Can traffic lights be hacked? Alan, should we start with our first story this week, which honestly almost sounds like it's something bad guys would use in a Hollywood plot to make a bank robbery escape or something, doesn't it, Alan? And what's ridiculous is how easy it actually turns out to be.
Well, it's like we've seen it in movies countless times.
Yeah.
The bad guy has a little box and he presses the button and all the lights turn green for him and he can cause...
Or, in 24, Jack Bauer's trying to get somewhere fast, so Chloe hacks the network and turns all the lights green or turns all the lights red to stop the bad guy. And you're always like, oh, sure. Yeah. Turns out...
Yeah, and also you see things like, just the computer hacker sitting in his basement and causing car crashes by making the lights go green in both directions.
That could never really happen, right, Alan?
Well... So some researchers from... actually, I missed which university they were from, I think, but found a startling lack of security in the traffic management system. So they started investigating the systems that control the traffic lights at intersections in some unnamed city in Michigan.
Yeah, it was the University of Michigan, too.
Yeah, okay. So they found that the system uses IP traffic transmitted over 2 different wireless protocols for the different stoplights to basically create a tree network, right? So, the controller's here, and then it kind of spreads out from there wirelessly so that they can reach further and further away.
Right.
Kind of like the smart power meters do here, right? Not everyone's connected back to the central office, but you jump to your neighbor, neighbor jump along wirelessly until you get to somebody that does have a connection back to the head end. Rather than having to hardwire, Ethernet or whatever, copper to every single traffic light. But they found that the 2 protocols, there's one that's a 5.8 gigahertz line of sight. So that one, the 2 traffic lights have to be able to see each other to get a good signal. The advantage to that one is it's faster, right? Higher frequency gives you more information per second.
Right.
But higher frequencies don't go through things as well.
Right. And there's probably, more gear out there these days that work on those frequencies too, I would think, right?
Right. And then they have their fallback protocol is a 900 megahertz protocol that 900 megahertz goes through buildings and walls a lot better.
Sure.
So that works when there's buildings or stuff between these traffic signals so they can't see each other. but all the information is sent over wireless links, and it's completely unencrypted and has no authentication.
Oh, what could go wrong?
Now, both of the wireless things are using non-standard protocols, so proprietary protocols, but specifically the 5.8 gigahertz one, that's the same frequency range that 802.11n uses. And it's actually, it turns out the protocol is very similar to 802.11n, just, customized so that your 802.11n device won't be able to connect.
Right,
or
so
see
maybe
the
even
network.
the same type of hardware, just different protocols.
Right, well, it's such that it's entirely likely that somebody with a laptop or a smartphone and some software would be able to connect to that network if they knew what to do.
And again, this is the network that all the cameras are being controlled with,
Not
and
just
lights.
the cameras, but the actual lights as
Yeah.
well, yes. So when you take over the system, you get control of the lights and the cameras.
Woo!
While it would be possible to reverse engineer the custom wireless protocol, to save times, the university researchers managed to just get a hold of one of the radios that actually speaks the protocol and then hook that up to their
Yeah.
computer.
Okay.
Now, some people are like, hey, that's like cheating. It's like, well, we've proven before that it's not that hard to get those, just using some social engineering, right? If you just call up the company that sells them and be like, yeah, we're from the city. We need one of our radios broke down. Could we get an extra one of those radios? If you're willing to pay for it, they're not really that concerned about selling it to you, right?
Right.
So it's not impossible for an attacker to get one of these, although it's entirely possible somebody could reverse engineer the wireless protocol and not need it anymore. So once they were on this network by attaching that radio to their computer and associating with it, because it works very much like regular wireless. Once you have the special radio, they found that the management system is running VxWorks, which is a real-time operating system. So that's different than a regular operating system in that it's all about scheduling, making sure that stuff can happen within a very, very short amount of time. And they found it's VxWorks 5.5, which is like a version from the late 90s. It's rather dated now. They're up to VxWorks 11. But anyway, it was very popular in embedded devices in the 90s. So VxWorks is usually built from source so that it can be customized, right? It's a proprietary OS, but you buy it in order to build a product around it. So you get the source code when you buy it, and you compile it yourself and have on your own custom
It's
stuff.
not like something consumers are ever picking up.
Right, but it's not a proprietary OS, kind of like Windows, where you buy it and then you build your product on top of it.
Right.
VxWorks is you buy the OS, you license the OS, and then you build your product into it.
That's interesting.
So it includes a bunch of debugging options that are enabled by default, or anyway, in this case, they weren't turned off. So VxWorks is running with a TCP port open, and when you connect to it, you can issue commands to read and write random memory locations, kill any task on the machine you want, or restart it, or whatever.
Okay. Wow.
You have basically complete access via this debugging port without any authentication. This wasn't meant to be left on in production. Although I'm sure it facilitates debugging by the vendor when there is a problem in production.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it was built in a
it's
time.
supposed to be the secure network.
Right, exactly.
Nobody else is going to be on our proprietary wireless network.
Exactly.
That's all super safe because we changed a couple of bits in the 802.11 protocol.
Right, and
one
maybe
will
back
guess
when that
that.
system was built too, some of that equipment was much more
Right.
not as widely spread. I'm not saying the right way, but it wasn't as it was equipment that wasn't as readily available to everybody too.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was almost security through obscurity in a sense.
Yeah. But by using that debugging feature and by just capturing the wireless traffic once they were able to associate with the network, the researchers were able to reverse engineer the protocol that the controller uses to send commands to the traffic lights and the cameras. It turns out each command is basically the same, right? So that there's like a common starter point, and then just like the last bit or two of the command that's different that tells the camera to do different things,
Okay.
or the stoplight to do different things. And so once they had got one or two of those and they understood how it works, they could just start flipping the bits, keep changing that bit to different things until they found every possible command and looked at, you stand there by this traffic light and, well, if we send 001, it turns green. If we send 0010, it turns yellow. And
Right.
100 turns red.
Yeah.
But if we have 101, this happens. And, every possible combination until you figured out what every different command does. But the important things are that there's no encryption, so that once somebody gets on the network, they can see everything that's being sent back and forth. There's also no authentication. So that means that the devices will accept a command from anyone, not just the controller, right? So there's no, like, the commands aren't signed such that the traffic light makes sure the command was actually from the VxWorks box and not from my laptop before it accepts it. Also, they found that even if they did have some kind of system like that, it's vulnerable to replay attacks. So if you capture the traffic of the VxWorks machine telling that traffic light to turn red, if you record that, you can just play it back later, and the traffic light will turn red again.
Mm-hmm.
So even if there was some kind of system that, or if you weren't able to reverse engineer the protocol or something in some way to make it so that you couldn't write packets yourselves, you could just capture the commands you want and then replay them on the network later.
Right. That would almost be easier.
Yeah. And there's no firewalls. So once you're on the network, you can talk to every device.
Of course.
Now, it's wireless, and so once you're on the LAN, it kind of makes sense, but it definitely seems like this would be an ideal place to deploy some like SSL or IPsec or something, so that, and some authentication and
Right.
authorization, so that, you know, they'll only accept real commands from the controller.
No kidding.
Like, you don't even have to go really that complicated. It's like at the bottom of the command, you include a hash of the command and the, you know, you do an HBAC signature or whatever, like you do in regular API calls you do on the internet
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. It didn't have to be that complicated to make it fairly safe. Also, they found that an attacker can trip the failsafe mode, where basically the traffic lights go into just blinking red in
Yeah.
every direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to get back out of that mode, a technician has to physically go and reset the light, like by going to the location of that traffic light.
That's going to
and
cause
so
some
an
inconvenience.
Right. And so the attacker could do a kind of denial of service attack by tripping a bunch of those, or by tripping them faster than they could be repaired.
Right.
So you could just like trip the one over here, and once they go over there and repair it, do one on the other side of town, and then back on the first side of town, and just blink, 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 and make the lights go crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest problem is that the 5.8 gigahertz network is so similar to the regular 802.11n,
Right.
and every laptop or mobile device has that kind of radio capable of communicating on that band built into it, such
crazy.
that, you know, if somebody reverse engineers the protocol and writes a driver for it or whatever, then they could probably access this network from their laptop without any special hardware.
And I'm sure there's no logging or auditing either of access and things like that.
It's a private network.
Right.
It's never going to be on. No one else is going to get on here.
So somebody that has equipment in their laptop and they find a system that's using this 5.8 gigahertz spectrum, if they could make the protocol changes, whatever they have to make to their laptop to communicate to this, not only would they get access to this network, but then there would be no log that they were ever there.
Yeah. And yeah, on top of just being able to turn lights and stuff, they could get the camera feeds and the live stream, so they could use it to like record and watch all the cameras and see what's happening.
Or maybe disable the cameras, depending on,
Yep.
I could go back to that bad guy getaway.
Exactly. So both the 5.8 gigahertz network, because it's almost 802.11n, it actually supports WPA2, and the 900 megahertz network is older but supports WEP or the original WPA.
Okay.
So both the networks support encryption, it's just not used. The traffic management system itself supports username and password authentication, but the default credentials are used on everything. No one ever actually set up usernames and passwords. So there's a couple of possible things that could be done to make very easy things that could be done to make this less of a problem. They're just not being done. So the paper, I have linked the PDF in here, called Green Lights Forever, Analyzing the Security of Traffic Infrastructure.
Yeah.
Was presented at Usenix Woot, which is the Workshop on Offensive Technologies.
Woot 14, Alan.
Yeah.
In
The researchers
August.
pointed out the most alarming quote they got from the vendor. So they called up
yeah.
the company that makes this system or,
Yeah.
or that sells it to the city
Yeah.
and asked them about it. And the vendor said, quote, we have followed the accepted industry standard, and it is that standard which does not include any security.
Yep. In other words, we followed the CYA protocol, and we're not responsible for that.
Well, it's more that we did what everybody else does,
Yeah.
and nobody else does security, so we didn't bother.
Right. Well, the industry standard doesn't say I have to, so I'm not going to. It's not my problem. It's their problem to figure that part out.
Yep.
Yeah. Good and fascinating details we actually got on this study, which is really cool.
the PDF has a bunch of cool pictures and shows what the network actually looks like and diagrams, and
Yeah, and you
there's
also
some pictures of the actual hardware as well.
I mean, you got the frequency that the networks run on. You get the version of the management software. I mean, we don't normally get that meaty of technical details in one of
Right,
these.
because these guys were researchers. They were actually working with the city and were allowed access to do this. Right, they weren't doing it as rogue people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
But they did get access to actually use this on the live network, not just in like a lab.
right. They
environment.
actually. That's the other thing I think that's probably worth mentioning is they coordinated with traffic safety and local traffic safety, and then did it. Like they actually went out. It's not all theory. They actually went out and did this, which is more spooky. And I think it's really good they're releasing this information, so maybe other areas could see this too. So, anyways, Alan, any other thoughts on that story before we run?
No, but you should definitely check out the PDF because it's even more interesting.
Yes, and we'll have that linked
Because
in
they
the
talk
show
about
notes.
firmware updates and changing default credentials and all the different, broader lessons that they could have learned and related stuff going on in the field and what's left for them to keep working on to find out more about this and lots of interesting stuff.
That story sounds like it could be the center idea behind an awesome movie plot, and it makes my head spin with possibilities. And you know what else makes my head spin? The freaking savings I get from Ting. Go to techsnap.ting.com. Why does it make my head spin? Spin because I only pay for what I use. Ting just takes my minutes, my messages, and my megabytes, and they add them up. Whatever bucket I fall into, that's what I pay. It's $6 for the line, and that's it. No more crazy contracts. No more, I might need 5 gigabytes, so I better pay $40 a month for 5 gigabytes. No more of that scam. Ting is on a mission to make mobile make sense. And I think they're doing it. And you can get started by going to techsnap.ting.com. It'll take $25 off your first device. If you have a Ting-compatible device, they have a BYOD page, then they're going to give you a $25 credit. But better than that, too, they also have an early termination relief program, so you can get out of that contract. They're up in the goods, too. You could really make out on this. And if you combine our special discount with the ETF relief program, you could really, really start saving some money. They're going to give you up to $150 per contract you have to get canceled. Then you move into Ting, and you got no more ETFs and no more contracts anyways. You want to use hotspot or tethering. Hotspottering, I like that. You just turn it on and you have access to it. You got it. And Ting's going GSM too, so they're going to have CDMA and GSM. So you're going to have all of the great aspects of Ting, like their excellent no-hold customer service, their super awesome dashboard that I love. They also have an Android and iOS app. Plus, your dollar's going towards a company I think you're going to be pretty comfortable voting with your wallet for. Ting has a great post up on organic net neutrality, and I haven't had a chance yet to point it out for our TechSnap audience. I think it's something that would probably be relevant to your interest. So get started by going to techsnap.ting.com, try out their savings calculator, get a look at their dashboard, maybe even call them at 1-855-TING-FTW. I know it's almost impossible to wrap your brain around, but now I'm entering my 2 years with Ting, and I got to tell you, I fundamentally and passionately believe that we as consumers have to make this switch in order to force this very obstinate industry into better practices. And you can personally be involved with that by going to techsnap.ting.com. Check them out. Start saving money right now. Take advantage of that ETF program while they have it, and then you can utilize GSM when they roll it out in February. techsnap.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSnap program. All right. techsnap.ting.com. I tell you what, my Nexus 5 is, I still think it's one of the best devices. They got a lot of other great devices too. So there you go. Now, one of the stories that was huge this year was the whole TrueCrypt disaster. It has us still kind of searching. And it's a story that's so big, we're still covering it in some regards, and even some of the most recent episodes. But this next clip is really where we dove into the TrueCrypt disaster for the first time. Alan, huge show this week. Huge show. Yesterday, as I was getting Unfilter sort of prepared, the whole internet blew up about TrueCrypt. Like, TrueCrypt is like, in the last 24 hours, I feel like my whole world has gone upside down because, I don't know, maybe I was mistakenly one of those people that was like a TrueCrypt believer.
Yeah. Well, so I guess to start, TrueCrypt, their website now announced that the project is being shut down and that you should stop using it.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, TrueCrypt is like a cross-platform encryption system that can do both like images, like just here's an encrypted file that lives on my hard drive full of encrypted files, like a volume, or whole disk encryption. So you can encrypt your operating system disk or even a USB stick or whatever. One of the advantages was it was available for Windows, Mac, Linux, BSD, etc. So it meant that if you encrypted a USB stick, on Windows and took it to another machine, like a Linux machine, you could still plug it in and access the files. Right, where most operating systems now have some type of encryption system, but none of them are compatible between each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the website for TrueCrypt was changed yesterday to state that TrueCrypt may contain unfixed security issues and you should stop using it.
Not just changed, but redirected to a SourceForge page.
Right, they shut down their hosting and moved the domain to SourceForge, which they already had a page at SourceForge. They just updated it and did the redirect instead. The page also states that now that Windows XP is end of life, this is kind of why they're doing it. All supported versions of Windows, which is Vista and up, now come with BitLocker, and so there's no reason for people to still depend on TrueCrypt. Whereas when XP was still alive, TrueCrypt was basically your only option on Windows XP. The website also provides information and set of screenshots and showing you how to convert your data, how to take your stuff off TrueCrypt and put it onto BitLocker. And it also released the new version 7.2 of TrueCrypt, which only allows users to decrypt their files, not encrypt any new files. So you can only use it to get your data out of your TrueCrypt volume, not you can't keep using TrueCrypt with the new version. Originally, people obviously thought this was a hack of the website, partly just because of how bare bones the website is. It was, put together very quickly, and they figured that the website got compromised and somebody wrote this up or whatever, and so they were very suspect of the new version of the software on the website. Right? It's like, don't download that; it's probably a Trojan or something, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
However, once people started looking into it, the new 7.2 binary is signed with the same private key that 7.1 and so on was signed with.
Oh, I thought it was signed with the key that was generated after 7.1.
No, it's the same key they've been using for at least the last 2 years.
Ah, okay.
There was something with a key on SourceForge. Something happened, and but it got reverted, so I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, so the new binary is signed with the same key as the old ones, suggesting that it was published by the same people. Also, a bunch of other little, inconspicuous bits are the same, like the path it was compiled from and a bunch of little metadata like that. That just suggests it was done the same way as all the previous ones, not done by somebody else.
Also, in terms of the website, I believe staff at SourceForge said, we don't detect any unusual activity. Nobody's contacted us for support to take control of the page.
Right. Yeah, there was no unusual login activity. It's not like there was a password reset done or something. Part of the hubbub came around the fact that SourceForge recently changed the way they store passwords from whatever they were doing, I think, to bcrypt or SHA-512 crypt, which they should have been using the whole time. But anyway. And so they were asking people to change their passwords to update in the database so they would be on the new scheme. And people kind of, with that, seeing that happen everywhere else, they kind of assumed that meant SourceForge was compromised. But SourceForge says no, they were just, switching their algorithm because they don't want to be the next Adobe with doing their password hashing wrong.
Good point.
Yeah. And so, they say that there's nothing suspicious about the login and the upload and the changes to the page and stuff. There's a couple things that kind of complicate matters for TrueCrypt. One of them is that the developers of TrueCrypt are anonymous. They, for some reasons, we don't know who they are. So it's also hard to be able to confirm with, who the developer is when we don't know who that is to tell, are you the one that did this or is it somebody else?
Right. I mean, I think that's because of the type of software they've been making. That seems understandable.
Right, yes. It's understandable, but it complicates the matters as far as telling who's, if this is an authoritative change or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, one conjecture has been perhaps this is an elaborate way to smoke out some of the developers, in a sense, to get them to come out and verify themselves, like with their public key or something like that. I don't know.
That's possible, but they could probably do that while remaining anonymous. And secondly, it's like, how did somebody get access to do this?
Yeah. Including
the private key to sign the binary. Taking over the SourceForge page would have been one thing, but all the other things put together seem suspicious. One of the other complications is that, while the code for TrueCrypt is available, you can look at it, the license isn't completely open source. It's got a bunch of restrictions and stuff. So it may not be possible for people to actually continue the TrueCrypt project. even if the open source community wanted to pick it up because of the license. So there's a gist on GitHub that's kind of been tracking everything they could find and also just making their own speculation. And they basically came up with 3 possible explanations for this mess.
Yeah, I like these though.
The first one was that the website was hacked and somehow they also compromised the keys to sign the new binary, although that doesn't really look like that's what happened. Some of the weird things are, it's like, why would they suggest changing to BitLocker? And if you compromised the TrueCrypt website and had the private key to sign a new binary, would you make a version of TrueCrypt that's read-only, or would you make a version of TrueCrypt that like stole the files or something, right? Or pull a, what was that malware that encrypted people's files and extorted money out of them?
Oh yeah. Oh boy, it's funny how
months ago.
Yeah, bit something, right?
Yeah. Well, if you did that, you could just, have the next version of TrueCrypt, as soon as you mount the volume, it changes the password on you and be like, give me Bitcoins if you want your files
okay,
back.
so first, I mean, if you're going to bring up the question now, I want to ask you a little bit further on this. Yeah, why would you recommend BitLocker if you are supposedly so paranoid about your privacy that you've kept yourself so anonymous? Then you would probably not recommend a closed proprietary solution, because a lot of people who are in this space liked TrueCrypt because it was open source. Yep. So that's one thing. So why would you recommend a proprietary solution? And number 2, or B, whatever I was at, Microsoft is known to work with the NSA. So, like, why are they recommending a company that has been known to work with the NSA, whatever that means?
Tends towards more my explanation.
And then the other thing is that the Mac, I'm not sure, I haven't checked, but I read that the Mac OS 10 instructions for creating an encrypted volume were just to make a folder and call it encrypted, or make a new virtual disk and just name it encrypted. Like, it was a total joke. They weren't even real recommendations.
I didn't look at the OS X one because I wouldn't know what it looks like.
And then the other thing, like, if you're going to throw in the flag...
Open utilities, go to disk utilities, create a new image.
You're looking at it right now on the site?
Size of data encrypted by TrueCrypt and select... No, you select encryption from the drop-down.
Oh, okay, all right. See, that was what I was reading.
It makes a new volume, and you format it with encryption.
This whole thing sounds... And then, like, no mention of Linux, even though the TrueCrypt has been available for other
operating... here. If you have files encrypted on Linux, switch to DM-Crypt or one of those other things.
All right. See, I didn't read that far down.
Integrated support for encryption. Search available installation packages for words encryption or crypt and install one of those packages and switch to
essentially what they're doing then is they're just recommending... So what they're doing is...
you should switch to, because they're not going to keep...
Well, they're not even so much that. They're just recommending whatever the operating system's built-in encryption is, regardless of the merits of it.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. It just seems really weird, doesn't it?
Yep. Well... It depends on which of the 4 possible explanations that we've thought of they came up with,
okay,
right? Or that actually explains it. So number 2 was something bad happened to the TrueCrypt developers, such as takedown, or they were killed or something, or TrueCrypt itself was found to have some like super critical vulnerability that wouldn't be fixed or something like that.
They were in the middle of an audit.
Part of it is, that signed with the valid signatures and stuff suggests that it was the real author and that he was either doing this because he wanted to or because he was being forced to. Also, there was apparently subtle changes to the licensing text.
Yes.
Which makes sense if you're going to abandon the project. Although if you wanted it to continue as open source, the license should have been changed more to allow it to be continued.
That's another thing that's fishy a little bit.
Well, the biggest one that's fishy here is that TrueCrypt was strictly against using the TPM, the Trusted Platform Module, on the computer to store the keys, because there was the suspicion that the NSA would have, there would be extra keychains on that TPM that would allow the NSA. This is why I think
it's weird they're recommending. This is why it's odd they're recommending BitLocker.
Yeah. Well, part of it also is that you can't use the full disk OS encryption in TrueCrypt if you have EUFI in Secure Boot, right? Because it's not signed.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of suggesting that with TrueCrypt's been overtaken by events, right? Now the XP is dead, and every OS has built-in full disk encryption, and those work better than TrueCrypt. Maybe you should just switch to them or whatever. And, if you're doing full disk encryption, it's probably to protect yourself against your laptop being stolen, not against the NSA. Because if it's the NSA, does it really matter which disk encryption you used? If they're in your firmware, then there's nothing you can do, right? Or, we always have the rubber hose cryptography, right? That will just, beat you until you tell them the password. And that's why you should use FreeBSD's GDBE encryption. Have I told you about that one?
No.
Well, so there's regular GELI, which is the one that, that's like every other disk. And then there's GDBE, which is what they call embassy-grade encryption. So it basically has a kill switch where you can put in the right password and destroy the key and make the disk unreadable forever.
Nice.
You destroy the key. So that then when your embassy is captured by the bad guys and they have you hostage and they say, give me the password, you can give them the right password. And when they try it, they'll say, that is the right password instead of that is the wrong password.
Right.
But sorry, the key is destroyed. You can't have the data.
Toast the files.
So the only goal there is to try to save your life by you actually gave them the password, but sorry, the data's gone. You can't have it. As opposed to just saying, if you, the wrong password still shows up wrong. The right password looks right. It just can't decrypt it.
I like that.
Keys.
Yes.
It's probably doesn't apply to most people, but it's interesting.
I don't know, Alan. I mean,
so this one brought up the idea of that the TrueCrypt developer was being forced to do this or being forced to do something. Is that this was some sort of warrant canary? If you remember, we talked about this a while ago,
Yes.
where a project would write on his website that we've not been coerced to do anything by the NSA, and then if that ever disappeared, you would know that they had then been forced to do something by the NSA, but were under a gag order where they couldn't say that they were being forced to do it by the NSA. So, and again, this one is like it says TrueCrypt may be unsafe because there might be unpatched holes in it, right? And that kind of suggests that.
I've heard a lot of folks in the Jupiter Broadcasting community theorizing warrant canary. I wanted to back up though. You mentioned. It sounds like kind of like, well, I'll let you. I'll save it to the end. I have a couple more questions for you, but I'll let you continue.
Yep.
Because we can discuss it at the end of the roundup here.
But what it more likely seems like is that the author was just not interested in doing it anymore. Right? Like when you look at the history of TrueCrypt, the last time the major version came out, 7, when they started the 7 branch, was over 3 years ago now. And the last release of a version of TrueCrypt, 7.1a, was more than a year ago. It doesn't really seem like it's being actively maintained at all, does it? And with the license allowing open source not to continue with it, it's, kind of dead in the water. And that message makes sense now, right? There may be unpatched vulnerabilities in this because the author hasn't looked at it in over a year and doesn't intend to.
So do you think the audit that's going underway may be this issue for
the audit was underway, had found something, and so he was telling people to stop using it before the audit came out?
Or maybe he was just stressed they would, and, he's just like, I'm done with it.
Possibly.
Just knowing somebody's looking over my shoulder right now.
The first half of the audit, or the first section of the audit has been finished and didn't find any backdoors. But it wasn't actually looking at the cryptography, only at the general structure of the program to see if there were any obvious mistakes or obvious backdoors. Whereas if there's something hidden in the actual crypto, that required a different analyst to actually look at, right? Because it's a different skill set. So that's another theory, but we'll find out eventually about that one because the Open Crypto audit project is auditing it, and they'll let
continues
us know.
On. Wait, why so clunky? Why say things like
if
development
you're-
ended
if you're
5.14? And why so inaccurate and really pinning it on Windows XP? I mean, I grok what you're saying. You can't do full disk encryption with beyond
it's
XP, but that seems like a minor thing.
Now that Windows XP is dead, there's no reason to use TrueCrypt.
That's
the author's speculation.
But that seems like an inconceivable conclusion. I mean, that seems unbelievable because
it's like
you
OS
said
has
in the
full disk
setup.
encryption.
But like you said in the setup, TrueCrypt is the one true encryption system we could trust on to move between operating systems. I could encrypt on a Linux box and give it to you, and you could decrypt it on a Windows box or vice versa. And that makes TrueCrypt almost indispensable right there. And TrueCrypt has some really nice features, like the plausible deniability features and things like that.
Right.
And it seems like, personally for me, the last thing I need from TrueCrypt is full disk encryption. That's like in all of the things TrueCrypt does, that's the last thing on the list for me. And why? And so because XP is gone, you can't do full disk encryption anymore. Seems like a ludicrous conclusion. And for somebody who's theoretically spent more than a decade working on something that's open source, to then not enable that project to continue on and to make the small changes needed to the open source license, so that way the rest of the community could pick it up after all your years of work.
Changing the license is hard. It depends on how much of the license he actually owned to be able to change it. And, if he's done with it, then he doesn't want to spend any effort on it, right?
Well, so how do we know it's one person? Because I've read it's multiple people.
Right. Well, nobody knows, and that makes this that much more difficult.
And I could see a scenario where it's maybe a partnership, and there's a bit, or a group of people, and there's a bit of a split.
Right. Yeah.
Going
that was
on
one of the
right
other
now.
option was that there was basically a power struggle or something inside the project.
Because
And
you would
that
have
explains
key
why
access, you would have logins.
Right. Why the website would redirect to SourceForge. Maybe the guy had access to SourceForge, but not enough to overwrite stuff on the old web server or something. But, it depends. Generally, it comes down to if there were other people on the project, you think they might have said something by now.
Well, I mean,
It's only been a day.
They're
But,
sitting back and going, crap, do I want to out myself?
right, but you could do it. If they've managed to stay anonymous so far, I'm sure they could stay anonymous while still saying something, right?
The only thing that could make this story more interesting if Bitcoin was somehow involved, like a Bitcoin ransom.
Well, that's what I expected. If someone had hacked the website, that's what I would have expected.
Yeah, exactly.
To see
Yeah.
something like CryptoLocker, a Bitcoin.
CryptoLocker, you
extortion.
got it. Yeah, there you go.
The chat room got it.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
But
Gosh.
yeah, with the last major version being 3 years old, it seems like there hasn't really been a lot of movement in TrueCrypt in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, I understand software gets stable and doesn't have to be updated every month or
That's
something.
what I thought.
But with cryptography and stuff, you'd think there'd be at least small patches every once in a while.
Yeah,
To go more
I
than
do.
a year without a release
I-
really suggests something hinky.
That has persistently bugged me for a long time now.
But at the same
that's
time,
been on my
it's
mind.
Also, it's something people don't notice, right?
Oh, I've noticed.
Well, if you go to download it, you would notice. But
Yeah.
if you're just using it day to day, you might not notice that, hey, there hasn't been an update for this.
Yeah.
If you're going to the website and seeing, go to download it and see the release date on the version is like 2 years old, then you're like, oh, what's going on here? But
Well, and that I mean, I don't mean to harp on this whole XP thing, but that's a whole other thing. Like, who in the security field gives two craps about people on XP? If you're still on XP and you're concerned about security, then you've got other problems, right? Like,
Right.
again, to end one of the world's most recognized encryption projects, which, by the way, has been getting more attention than ever because it's come out recently that Edward Snowden threw an encryption party in Hawaii and he taught people how to use TrueCrypt. We know that Glenn Greenwald used TrueCrypt to secure the documents. So it's been covered more than ever. At a time, it's been more popular than ever. And the fact that, and by the way, those guys are using it on Macs. So the fact that it doesn't work on XP is that XP is gone doesn't matter to them at all. Again, I just go back to this XP thing, Alan, and I do not buy it. The whole thing seems fishy. And it's almost it almost begins by predicating the fact that XP's gone away. Like, well,
well, it just means that there's
Best
no
Windows
longer a
ever's gone
requirement
now.
for TrueCrypt because every OS that's supported now has their own built-in disk encryption,
yeah. I mean, I think the sad
which
part
is a valid statement, but isn't necessarily a valid reason for ending TrueCrypt. But
yeah.
honestly, with the way it's set up, it's like, why do people trust TrueCrypt in the first place?
Well, that's true.
It's written by a bunch of people you don't know and does
Or a
a bunch
person.
of things and has a really weird license. Like Linux people that normally harp on and on about open source licenses and then use TrueCrypt just seems weird to me. Just because of the way the license is set up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually think all things considered, this could be
I
a
have the feeling
developer
we'll
who's
never
not a very
know exactly what happened and that the conspiracy theories will go on forever.
true. But I think I think if you weigh up all of the conspiracy theories, I think the one theory that to me would tip the scale in one direction is essentially a burned out developer, not a very good communicator, maybe stressed out
Right.
about that audit
Specifically,
coming.
Like, why does the webpage look so bad? Because if I'm quitting a project, I'm not going to spend a week making a nice webpage for my resignation.
You're too
right?
busy dropping the mic. You're done. You're checking out.
Yeah, exactly.
I just go back to it. Just why not then just say, okay, have at it, world. It's yours
Right.
now.
Well,
Here's
part
my
of the problem could
baby.
be is that with copyright law, it might not be possible for him to if
Yeah,
he
I
doesn't
know.
own it,
All right.
he can't change the license.
You're right. Just
But yeah,
weird.
it'll
Alan.
be
It's just
interesting to see
weird.
what happens.
Yes.
There are some interesting projects. There's thing for Dragonfly BSD that uses TrueCrypt, or it's compatible with TrueCrypt. I don't know it possible it doesn't use any of the TrueCrypt code, but all of its own, which means that it might be possible to extract a TrueCrypt implementation from that for somebody to actually make an open source TrueCrypt that is under a BSD license that people could use.
Yeah, and I know, I don't know why, but I know over on the wiki.mandriva.com, there's a RealCrypt project, which is an application for Mandriva, which I don't even know, which is based on TrueCrypt. It only differs in a few small ways, like attributions where they have to. So there are some projects out there that are based on it. But
right. I didn't have time to read the whole license, and the license file has like 6 licenses in it and doesn't really indicate which applies to which part.
Convenient.
Yeah. And, a bunch of people talked about the change to the license, but they didn't have a diff between the two so you can actually see what the difference was.
Yes, I know Mandriva is Mandrake chat room. Jeez. Well, this has been an interesting... Oh, and Krebs also had a good write-up on it. We should point people to.
Yes, I have the link to that in the show notes.
Yes, so I mentioned to that.
He basically believes that TrueCrypt is over as well.
Yeah, and he doesn't
He's
seem...
mostly quoting the guy who is leading the audit for it, who says that he believes that this is real and that it's not a...
Who is a self-admitted, quote-unquote, TrueCrypt critic.
Right. He started the audit of TrueCrypt because he expected it to be horrible, although he admits that so far he hasn't been able to find anything wrong with it.
Well, but next phase begins. In next week's episode of TechSnap, we'll answer a viewer email about how to fully replace full drive encryption that is cross-platform TrueCrypt style. And we could use some of your input on that too. So stay tuned. That's coming up in next week's episode. You can see we're still kind of processing all of this. It's a real challenge. You know what else is a real challenge is selecting the right hardware, especially when you're an enterprise and especially when your name and reputation are on the line. That's why Alan and I recommend IX Systems. You can find out more by going to ixsystems.com/TechSnap. IX Systems is where we buy our hardware. Alan has deployed it throughout Scale Engine, and here our backend infrastructure at Jupiter Broadcasting for the storage is IX Systems. We sit in front of a virtualizer, and it has been amazing. The great thing about IX Systems, they can custom build these solutions for you. You really are working with experts. They have a white glove approach to all of this, and they do burn-in testing. They also have a really interesting blog. Go to ixsystems.com/TechSnap. That lets them know you appreciate them supporting the TechSnap program. It also gives you an opportunity to download their comprehensive white paper on the ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source tasks. 11 key traits you got to demand from a hardware provider. This can help you get the conversation started with management. Trust me, I've been in IT for a long time. I've never seen a company that combines the technical expertise, the software side, the support, and the sales the way IX does. It's pretty amazing. It's really a treat. It's really amazing. I mean, it truly is one of the treats in our industry. Check out their blog, too. They did a post on Supercomputing 2014. It was a little bit back, but I think it might have missed your attention. And it's fascinating to see what kind of hardware discussions they're having at these meetings. Everything from FreeNAS up to the big stuff, the really big iron stuff, the crazy stuff that IX System builds. They got the whole range, and they can provide something for a small office to a huge enterprise. ixsystems.com/TechSnap. All right. Well, next up is this new hot trend that we've been picking up on recently, and apparently it's one that you've picked up on too. The whole celebrity name and treatment for big security vulnerabilities. Well, we tackle that in our next clip. Okay, Alan. It's a phenomenon you and I have noticed quite a bit on the show, and that's sort of like these celebrity bugs, the branding of these bugs to like give them a name and a logo. And we got an article that kind of breaks some of that down, don't we?
Yeah.
The people behind it?
ZDNet, they talk a little bit about, they talk to some of the people that have been responsible for some of the naming of the stuff, and they have kind of a breakdown of what happened with Heartbleed and also a little bit about Shellshock, and kind of comparing those and talking with iSight Partners, the guys that named the Sandworm team.
Yeah.
And basically getting the different sides of the story and looking at the pros and cons of having names for bugs like this and things like that.
It's definitely
basically raising all the questions and to see what people are thinking.
I mean, it's something I know that not just you and I have noticed is becoming more and more common. And
yeah,
I'm on the fence. I don't really know. Part of me thinks it actually is a good thing in some ways. Getting awareness out there.
It's good and bad. There's a certain level of fatigue, so we can't do it for everything.
Yeah. It doesn't make it sound as bad or serious if they're all doing it, right?
Right. And so, if we need to reserve it for the serious ones, who decides what's serious enough? How do we prevent the small stuff from, Yeah, there's a lot of questions. But yeah, it talks about the advantages and disadvantages of naming the bugs like that, behind scenes info on how it came about and the different things that happened, and a lot of the criticism that went on in all the different directions.
Okay.
And maybe we can kind of come up with a system for doing this better in the future.
Okay. It's fascinating.
Right? So they say, if the bug is dangerous enough, it gets a name, right? So Heartbleed, the way Heartbleed was branded changed the way we talk about security. But did giving bugs a logo make them frivolous, or is it the evolution of what information security is going to be from now on?
Yeah.
So Heartbleed was discovered sometime before Friday, March 21st by a Google security engineer. And it was later shared with OpenSSL and Red Hat, and then later on shared with Cloudflare, and then also Facebook and Akamai. So the first problem there is, why does Google get to decide who gets responsible disclosure and who doesn't?
Yeah. That is interesting.
And I think a lot of the sharing that went on there was kind of back channel stuff, not, official stuff.
Yes, very
And,
much so.
Then Google adopted the whole Apple style. We're not going to mention who we said what to when, because we don't want to be liable for the fact that this was all, done.
But maybe
wrong.
maybe that's a sign they shouldn't have been doing it like that in the first place.
Exactly. Or more, it's a sign that people did stuff that maybe Google didn't approve of, but they're not going to out their security guys and so on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Doesn't necessarily mean it was. Yeah, it might not have been a policy from the top at all, right? It might have been,
or it might have been a lack of policy and procedure for dealing with,
something so
Heartbleed
critical.
scale bug,
Right.
because it's kind of a different thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they got reported back then, and then things advanced, and the OpenSSL guys had decided that on April 9th, they would do a coordinated disclosure of the bug. Meanwhile, in Finland, the security company Codenomicon had discovered the Heartbleed bug on April 3rd and reported it to their National Cybersecurity Center, CERT-FI, the following day, which would be April 4th. And, and also by this time, more and more people had heard at least rumors and
yes.
stuff,
Yep.
and people were spreading the word. It's the typical thing with any kind of secret. People start showing off by telling certain people, and then
And then
it's
the
like,
rumors start.
I'll tell you the secret, but you can't tell anyone else. And then that person's obviously going to do the same thing, and then it just spreads.
It's like high school or
Yep.
grade school all over again.
But in the meantime, the Finnish company, Codenomicon, they immediately went to work on a marketing plan, right? This discovery was going to launch their small firm no one had ever heard of to like internet superstardom. And, so they made a logo and they got a website and they came up with the name, and they were all set so that when the public disclosure happened on the 9th, they would have this website that would tell people how to fix it.
They'd be in a position to sort of own the news in a way.
Yeah, and so on. So the original public disclosure was supposed to be on the 9th. However, after details started to leak and the OpenSSL's team decided that since more than one group had already reported the bug, the Codenomicon guys had discovered it, it meant that more people could discover it, and then maybe bad guys could discover it and start exploiting it. So it became better to do the security release now as opposed to waiting for the 9th. And that's why everything happened early on the 7th and a little less organized than people would hope for.
Yeah, in fact, they say in the article that it was a 27-year-old Finnish graphic designer who just had a few hours to put the logo together because the site was going live immediately. So he had to hustle to design the Heartbleed logo, which
And that's why it's so simple.
Yeah, but it works.
But the crazy part is, or the genius part they did there was, in addition to the PNG logo or whatever on the site, they made an SVG, right, the scalable vector graphic, and they included that available for download. So it made it really easy for CNN to make a news logo out of it.
Yeah.
Or we saw how many T-shirts and hats and all kinds of it just kind of boomed all by itself.
It was everywhere.
Just because they made that logo in a way you could resize it to make it fit on everything.
that was a genius insight by the Codenomicon guy, really.
Exactly. Just a graphics designer was like, yeah, this way everybody can do it. They probably didn't put enough thought in it to think, they didn't make T-shirts and try to sell them on the website, obviously.
Yeah.
But it just, it happened that's what happened. So half an hour after OpenSSL published its security advisory on the morning of the 7th, Cloudflare had their blog post up, which seems like might have been written and ready to deploy as well, where they bragged in a blog and a tweet that they were the first to protect their customers and how Cloudflare was enacting responsible disclosure, even though they had gotten the information through a back channel and not through responsible disclosure.
Super responsible. Super.
But yeah, so they were basically trying to be like, oh, we were the first one to protect our customers because we've known about it since before everybody else. And you know, they were being the douches they always are. They're too good at that marketing PR stuff. Like, you know, remember we talked about when they had the biggest denial of service attack ever? And the backbones were like, no, it's not.
Right.
That happens every day.
Yeah. But they got a lot of traction out of it, though.
Yeah, because they had the guy and they convinced CNN and they were on the news, right? And the sysadmins and network engineers that work in the data centers and stuff aren't on the news. But, you know, the director of marketing for Cloudflare gets on the news.
Yeah.
So an hour after Cloudflare's little surprise, Codenomicon tweeted and announced that the bug and gave it the name and launched their website. Because originally, remember, they were planning to do this on the 9th, but when they saw that Cloudflare was already, you know, trying to claim they did everything or whatever, Codenomicon released their stuff in the website, which had the instructions on how to fix it, when lists, you know, which versions of different operating systems were vulnerable. Because if you remember, the FreeBSD 9 wasn't vulnerable because it was using a version of OpenSSL that didn't have the feature that had the bug in it.
Yeah.
But FreeBSD 10 was, and so on. And so there's lots of chance for confusion over which OSs and which packages and so on were vulnerable. So they had all that information spelled out. And obviously, like we mentioned, they had that SVG logo that made it easier for everything to go. Anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So then Heartbleed, which was originally called CVE 2014-0160, became a household term overnight. Even though average households still had no actual understanding of what it was, everybody knew that it was a thing, right? And the media mostly didn't understand what Heartbleed was either, but it had a logo, and it was easy to splash that logo up on every screen in the world, right?
And
every
a domain to
news
send,
site,
and a well-designed website to send more people to
with
get
an
more
easy name
information.
to get to, yeah. You know, it was good because they meant organizers and organizations who needed to remediate Heartbleed knew it was critical and moving fast, right? So like the Canadian government shut down the tax website because it might have been vulnerable, and you know,
It's true.
everybody worked on it faster because there was all this news coverage, right? If it had just been another CVE and it hadn't been on the news, you know, people's bosses wouldn't have been harping on that. Have we fixed Heartbleed yet?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, in certain critical cases, maybe that amount of media coverage is good. But like most things, media just sensationalizes everything, and it doesn't necessarily help. Right? We had the Bruce Schneier thing the other day talking about how, you know, just harping on every one of these is just going to make people numb to them instead of helping, right?
Yeah. Which has been a concern of ours, too.
Yeah. So in the end, it seems Heartbleed was a success, right? Most systems were patched within a couple of weeks, which is obviously too long, but still, you know, we've seen other critical patches for Java and stuff where people are still running 1.6.
Yeah.
And so seeing, you know, 85% of all the systems get patched quickly enough is good, although a lot of systems didn't follow the full procedure, right? And only like 20% of people ever did the whole revoke your old SSL certificate and get a new one, and the password resets, and all that stuff. Whereas, you know, we've seen some stories since then about, because of Heartbleed and we didn't reset our passwords, our VPN got Heartbleeded, and they had the passwords, and so they got into it later and were able to sit on it for a long time until we found out they were in there and had to change the password.
Yeah.
And we've suspected it in a couple other hacks where we haven't known how they got in, and we're like, I wonder if, you know, they got a password. They got the password they used to get in from running Heartbleed against that endpoint or whatever. So, you know, not everybody did all the steps they did, but at least they did something, which probably helped make sure that Heartbleed wasn't a bigger thing than it could have been.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And then, so on to the next thing, when they talk to eyesight partners about in this case, rather than naming viruses and stuff, they're naming groups, right? So, we had the APT1, the Chinese
Yep.
group, or the sandworm group, which really confused the media because they thought it was a worm and it was a bunch of people. Not the same thing at all.
Right.
But they happened to be using one exploit at the time, so I think that one honestly caused more confusion than it actually helped. But they have a decent justification for why they do it that way, right? They say, in justifying the name, the eyesight partner says, without naming these teams, it would be impossible for a network defender to keep track of all of the different ones. We think that's essential because intimately understanding these teams is the first step to mounting an active defense. Giving a team a name, as they did with Sandworm, helps the practitioners and the researchers keep track and attribute tactics and techniques and procedures. So it's like, we notice that this team always does this, whereas this other team's doing this other thing. So, which one, when you're seeing an attack, you can better understand which one it might be and things like that. Yeah.
It seems though, when I hear this, it seems like it went well. I kind of would have liked some better disclosure before it went public. I mean, sure, you could quibble about that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of a mess. Quite a few things happened all over the place.
But if you change out some of the components, this could also be a disaster. Like it doesn't mean just because Heartbleed worked out doesn't mean the next time it's going to work out really well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you're looking at it, it looks like Heartbleed was supposed to go fine, but because of the scale and the just how unique and big this particular bug was, people kind of lost their heads a little bit, and too many people talked, and honestly, it seems like the time scale was too big. Like normally, you're asking people to sit on it for a week or something.
Right.
In this case, people were sitting on it for far too long. But at least that one happened to work out. But yeah. So on to the next thing. We had vulnerabilities like Poodle.
Yeah.
They cited an article here from CNN Money.
It's awful.
That was alarmingly bad. Like, the reporters like woof woof in the middle of the article.
Poodles are attacking the internet is the headline.
Yeah, and it totally downplays that this is an important thing where your crypto could be downgraded and bad things can happen.
Yeah, this would be an example of where the branding doesn't work out so well.
Yeah.
There's literally a woof in the middle of the article.
Yeah, and a bunch of dog references. It just makes the whole thing look like a joke. It reads more like an Onion article, except for the Onion's more well written.
Yeah.
In this case, Poodle was a little bit of a backronym, but they didn't pick it because it had anything to do with dogs. They did because it was the acronym, right? It was a padding Oracle attack, downgrade, legacy encryption, or whatever. So it's a clever name technically, but obviously didn't have the targeted effect for.
Yeah.
Compared to what was the other ones, like Beast and
what
was the other one? I forget, but yeah. So that one probably didn't go so well. I don't think Poodle ever had a logo per se, and so on. But then you have Shellshock as the complete anti-case, right? This is an independent researcher that came up with it, not a company. So he didn't have a graphics designer and so on. So it didn't have a logo or an official website, which is actually part of the problem. I think even with Poodle, there was a Google blog post with the paper, but then some other site kind of became the semi-official site. And it had some longer domain. It wasn't the whole domain wasn't dedicated to this. It was just a sub-page, and so it made it harder to find stuff.
Yeah, definitely did.
So sometimes having a dedicated page with all the information is useful, but then who's responsible for maintaining that and updating it, and how long does it live, and all kinds of craziness. But yeah, so there's a timeline over on the security list, but the Shellshock is quite an interesting one. When it was actually discovered, the author called it Bashdor, as in backdoor. And then he had done responsible disclosure to the creator of Bash, and was working with some of the distros to get that sorted out, and was planning to release it to the other distros and have a normal patch cycle. But somebody somewhere that got the advance notice about it, took that advance notice and showed it to the press. And so someone was obviously planning to do something with this, and it went further. And the person who leaked it, or the press, or somebody came up with the name Shellshock, not the creator of it.
Oh, okay.
So this led to some immediate confusion. Is Shellshock the same thing as Bashtor?
Yeah.
Right? And, I, for one, had never heard of Bashtor until I read about this today.
Huh.
It was Shellshock when I heard about it in the middle of a conference while I was in Europe. And as further, because the initial fix for Shellshock vulnerability didn't entirely solve the problem.
Right. I remember that.
So if you read the actual timeline, the very first fix never was released because it was trivial to work around it, and went back and forth many times. And then the final fix came out, and it turned out that it didn't fix everything. And so then there was a second fix that actually fixed it. So people thought they were patched and they weren't, right?
Okay.
And then
I remember.
we had all these other vulnerabilities that were discovered when people started looking, when people saw what the vulnerability was that was Shellshock, they started digging into Bash, and we immediately found like 4 other vulnerabilities in Bash that were unrelated necessarily.
Right.
They're maybe tangentially related, but were not the same bug at all. Each of these got a unique CVE number to be tracked properly, but they were all kind of collectively began to be called Shellshock, even though, if you installed the patch for the CVE that was the original Shellshock vulnerability that was fixed, you would think you were secure, but you were missing 3 other patches. Because you patched Shellshock, but there was these other things that were now becoming called Shellshock, even though they weren't Shellshock, right? And so in this case, having that one name almost kind of backfired in that it became, the meaning was less specific, right? And that caused all kinds of problems.
Yes, no kidding.
And, it didn't have a logo or a website and so on.
Where's the fun in that?
So they had a great closing quote here of kind of relating to Shellshock back to the Heartbleed. It said, the researchers didn't tell their closest business buddies in a game of telephone, or one in which Heartbleed became an arm race of egos, insider information trading, and opportunism. Right? So that's kind of what happened, right? People that knew about it, wanted to show off with how much they knew, and they knew this big secret. So they went and told other people.
There's a lot of money in this industry now, too.
Yeah. Now, with the Heartbleed, the Google side, obviously, there wasn't much, they weren't trying to make a name for themselves as a security researcher. Now, Codenomicon was, obviously.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it wasn't Codenomicon that was leaking the information to Cloudflare and other people and letting them patch before everybody else, right? So you had a bit of that, and then obviously the opportunism of Cloudflare being like, "Oh, we were the first to protect our customers."
Right.
It's like, technically, wasn't Google the first to protect their customers?
Yeah.
And so on, and the insider information trading, right? We had, how did Facebook find out about it from Google? It's like, was there some little... I'm just picturing, the people that work at the pair places end up at the same bar and some chatting happens, and then all of a sudden Facebook knows about this secret vulnerability or whatever, right?
Yeah, and it helps to be in the inside club in that case.
Yeah. I don't know the whole story, but I know there was some fallout from that type of stuff. I don't want to mention any names or something, but someone I know was asked to leave their employer and find different employment after they felt that the way things happened was not correct.
Really? Yeah, I suppose there's all kinds of things like that happen behind the scenes when these big things happen and we don't even ever really know about it.
Yes, and when there's insider information trading and it's like, well, that's not fair. If you're going to tell these people, you have to tell other people as well, right?
Well, Alan, it's been this probably been, I don't know.
So
I think one of the more...
A couple of questions up, basically. So who gets to decide what bugs are bad enough to get a name instead of just a CVE number?
Right.
Should MITRE, the people that assign CVE numbers, start tracking the names and attaching them as part of the CVEs?
Well, it would seem like sometimes the names get decided in a sense by the press because the press just sort of start collectively calling it Shellshock, and that's what it becomes.
Exactly. It kind of reminds you of they kind of talk about this a little bit in the article of naming serial killers. It's usually not the cops that name the serial killer; it's the media. But especially in the cases of these security things, the media doesn't know what they're talking about. They were calling Heartbleed a virus, and it's not a virus, right? And so on. And so they're not really competent to be naming it either. And obviously, there's downside of if the researchers are naming it. You kind of have this, is it an independent researcher who's just giving it a name to help track it, or is it a company who's doing it to try to make a name for themselves, kind of thing?
Which is going to happen more and more. It's a big market. Yeah. So I think looking back at 2014, this is one of the more interesting things. This kind of started, back in April? And it just sort of picked up, and it's like when you find an asteroid or any other kind of discovery, like somebody wants to name it. There's that element too. It's like, I am the one that discovered it. I want to put a name on it. There's almost like a pride aspect to it.
I'm surprised that none of those, unlike comets, have not been named with the person's name.
Yeah.
But I guess the vulnerabilities have a negative connotation, and you don't want your name forever plastered over this security flaw that was used to ruin people's businesses and stuff.
That is a good point.
But yeah, so it's an interesting question whether the CVE numbers should start tracking the name as well, just to kind of create that cross-reference there. But then who officially signs a name, and then we have like a aliases field, because remember the WGET one. People were trying to come up with names for it, and none of those names officially stuck. But people had proposed names and started talking about it, using those names.
Yeah.
And how do we decide what names are official? And it just leads to a whole mess.
Yeah, it does.
And then the other thing is looking at who gains more from naming the bug. Is it the end user who gets protected because the extra attention about it meant it got fixed, or they're just aware of it so they know to look out for it or whatever, and are able to protect themselves? Or is it more, the PR-powered firms that exploit it for their own good, like the security researchers, the commercial security researchers, and so on, rather than the academic type, and places like Cloudflare that just want to take advantage of it to make a name for themselves.
So this is why I think it's not going away. Is this question right here? Because in a way, everybody benefits.
There's so much money to be made, especially in commercial security research now, where before it was always academic, right? You wrote a paper and you got to present at a conference, and that was it.
Right.
Now you're talking about, rock stars and then, crazy perks and working in a silly office and the water slide. And
these guys, these security consulting companies are getting funded at 26. There was a story today about one that I've never even heard of before that just got a round of $26 million in funding. Right? There's a lot. So there's a lot of money for them. There's positive aspects for end users. There's positive aspects for the press. Everybody's everybody's in, Alan. Everybody's in on this. It's not going away.
We kind of talked about that with that article about the 11 reasons why this was bad the other week, right? Is like the media doesn't know what they're talking about, but they're getting copy out of it, so they're just going to keep printing it, right?
Well, but in a way, like it is easier okay, so if I'm watching CNN and Wolf Blitzer's up there talking about Heartbleed, and I'm like, what the heck is Wolf talking about? I can at least go Google Heartbleed, but like remembering like MSKB19 or CVE dash, like that's a lot harder as somebody watching casually to go get more info. So that's another benefit of it being branded, is it makes finding information out at least somewhat easier. I don't think it's going away. I guess we'll be right here to watch it. It's been an interesting development of 2014. Out of all of the headlines, this one said something about ultrasonic networks and like a mesh network, and I thought this is definitely a TechSnap story. So is this where we start, Alan?
Yes. This one's about exfiltrating data from secure networks using an ultrasonic mesh network.
Well, there you go. Of course it is.
So researchers at the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany have developed a protocol based on underwater communication protocols, so protocols for talking between submarines, and actually retrofitted them for use with laptop speakers and microphones.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
So for those that don't know, the Fraunhofer Institute is famous for having invented the MP3 codec, and was also a significant contributor to H.264 and MPEG-4 AVC, which is what we use for this show. So they've issued a paper that describes a covert channel that can be used to circumvent firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, and all types of network security, basically.
This is basically to bypass an air gap, maybe, that we don't, if you can communicate via microphone and speaker. Okay.
Yeah. So it'll work across an air gap as well, but even just regular network where it's all firewalled off or whatever.
Okay.
So normally, if you have a secure system, you would air gap it, or you would, put it up on a network where it could only access certain parts of the internet, or, only connections that are specifically blessed could get out, and anything else was set off an alarm. So if you manage to install a keylogger on that machine, you don't want to then have it connect out to your website to send you the keylog, because then people would, then the intrusion prevention system might detect it and you would get caught, and that's not what you want.
Right.
Or the system's air gapped and there's no other way out. So what they've come up with is an ultrasonic sound that would be emitted by the laptop speakers and then received by the microphone in another laptop that was also infected. And then they could just keep hopping across laptops until eventually they got, to an outside wall where someone outside the building could maybe pick up the signal.
Right, and then pass it to
whatever.
some other kind of
Or
connection.
even just, if it's an air gap, just get onto the regular network and then pass out or whatever. So with what they've designed so far, it has a range of up to about 20 meters, which is quite far. That's, I don't know how many feet that is, but anyway. And the bandwidth is pretty abysmal, though, at 20 bits per second.
Well, I guess it depends on what you need to send. That's pretty bad, though.
Well, if the data's so secret that it's on an air-gapped machine, you want it at whatever cost.
Yeah,
So,
you'll take it. You'll just maybe it's just text you can get, yes and no type things if at worst case.
yeah, or if you have the 8 hours at night when no one's around
Right.
to copy the data, you can start.
Well, and if it's ultrasonic, then it could be going on during the day and nobody would even hear it,
Exactly,
right? So
yes. So the proof of concept was created by installing a keylogger on a laptop. For their experiment, they used Lenovo T400 laptops, which are quite old by standards now. So I imagine it's because they could get a bunch of them for cheap or whatever. But so then they put the keylogger on the victim laptop, and then the keylogger included software that would make it send out or emit the ultrasonic sounds, which are inaudible to the human ear. You can't hear them. And then that would be picked up by other infected machines using their microphone and then repeated later out of their speakers and then picked up by the next laptop and so on and so on, allowing them to extend the transmission range so they could get outside of the secure area, the locked room or the building that you're not allowed inside of or whatever.
am I remembering correctly that there was some speculation that perhaps Stuxnet used some sort of audio transmission technique to spread from one machine to another? Does that ring a bell to you at all?
Remember hearing that?
Okay.
I've heard talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
Reading monitors through
It might have
walls
just
and
been
picking stuff
speculation.
up yeah, but that's possible. But I'm pretty sure that Stuxnet was carried in on a USB stick.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one that's in the open for everybody to see now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so eventually the signal would either reach outside the protected area where it could hit a laptop that the attacker controlled and they would have their copy of the information then, or just reach a machine that's on the regular internet or whatever, and it could be retransmitted via TCP or whatever.
Right.
So the paper goes on to describe all that in great technical detail. If you're interested, it's a great read. And then they talk about the countermeasures, how they could stop this.
Oh,
from
okay.
happening.
Yeah.
So the easiest countermeasure would be to just disable the speaker and microphone hardware,
Yeah.
which
So-
might make sense if it's, a super secure machine for this or that. But if you want to be able to make a Skype call from your machine or whatever,
Or listen to my MP3s.
yeah. Although, if the machine's got super secret data on it, maybe you shouldn't be using Skype. But
Yeah. Tell that to the
anyway.
users.
So yeah, disabling the speaker and microphone entirely is not always the possible
I
thing.
suppose.
So
Yeah.
they then suggest maybe a low pass filter that would just remove the ultrasonic frequencies. So if it wouldn't emit the sound if you can't hear it. And so the user wouldn't notice any difference. It would just make it impossible to do these secret things.
Could you also blast a room with ultrasonic white noise to just sort of...
Possibly, yes.
Huh.
Then the other idea was just, instead of a low pass filter, was to just shift down the ultrasonic frequencies into the audible range.
Uh-huh.
So now, if the machine ever got infected, people would hear the random screeching noises coming out of the laptop and be like, what's going on? My laptop's infected.
Well, what about using this just to allow inter-device communication over an ad hoc little mini LAN?
Then you could use regular ad hoc Wi-Fi.
I suppose
you
so.
wouldn't need to make it secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just like the idea
inside
of
the
them
firewall.
being off my Wi-Fi, but devices still being able to communicate, like,
20 bits per second.
Yeah, it's not
and
enough,
probably
is it?
annoys
It'd have
the
to be,
shit
like-
out of your dog.
it'd have to be... You're right. The poor dogs. They would be going crazy.
Ultrasonic might be too high for the dogs
Yeah.
as well.
Well, yeah, maybe. But for the one or two breeds that might be able to pick it up, they would be just terrorized.
Why is the dog attacking my laptop?
Right. I was thinking like
Russian hackers.
the bathroom light tells the downstairs coffee machine that, 1 for on, 0 for off. So he's come in, he's turned on the light, so turn the coffee machine on. That kind of state sharing information would be neat. But you're right, they would just do it over
Ethernet
Wi-Fi.
over power line would be.
Yeah, Yeah, I suppose so. This is more for covertly passing information.
Well,
And
especially when it's limited to 20 meters and 20 bits per second. And at that 20 meters, I'm almost 100% sure ultrasonic sound doesn't go through anything. So it'd have to have line of sight. Like it won't go through a wall at all,
I didn't know that.
if I'm not incorrect.
Well, that would severely limit.
The ultrasonic rodent repellent things I have in my basement to keep the mice out of my basement are based on that. It's like, just
Okay.
if you put something in front of it, it'll stop working because it won't go through anything.
Okay. I have an old ultrasonic remote TV sensor. Yeah, I was thinking of that too, Netminers. I used to have something kind of like that.
Then the paper also goes on to discuss a host-based intrusion detection system that would analyze all audio coming in and out of a machine to look for suspicious signals.
Oh, could you imagine as part of an IDS having like microphones in your most secure rooms listening for these types of transmissions?
Or rather, on a secure laptop, listening to everything coming in over the microphone and looking
Right.
for anything that looks suspicious.
Right. So it's software on the machine always with the mic always on, always listening. Wow. Boy, that's such a creepy level of paranoia. I'm so glad I don't even have to worry about that kind of stuff, because that's the kind of stuff
It's not
that like.
recording everything you say. It's,
No, I know. It's just even having to worry about like somebody using ultrasonic transmissions to steal my data. I'm glad I'm not in any
Right.
kind of
But
industry
again,
where
that-
that's a
yeah, you'd have to be doing something pretty fancy to
Yeah.
get in.
pretty fancy. All right. Well, anything else on that story?
The PDF's there and it has all the goodness.
Including some good graphs and some good little visual demonstrations of the transmission, like in an office building and stuff.
All right, well, Alan wrote in, but it's only Alan with a single L. He says, longtime listener of TechSnap, loved the show. Last time and many times before, you mentioned island hopping. Can you tell us more about that and how it can be done if computer C does not have access to the internet, but you can get to it through computer A and B? And another scenario, if you break into a Windows box, how can you run commands on a Unix or Linux system? I can't imagine how this could be done, so I hope you understand my question, or if it's easier for you to explain, he can include some examples. And he linked to several previous tech snaps, 86, 13, 89, and 34, where we've talked about island hopping.
Yeah.
And he also had one more question. Alan has 3 LANs in his house, so could someone island hop due to software vulnerabilities from one LAN to another? Thanks for the great show.
Okay. So, say you have a business here and you have computer A, which is, say, the secretary's workstation, it's on the internet. And then you have computer B, which is, say, where you do the credit card processing, and that doesn't have access to the internet. But the secretary has access to that computer B so that when someone phones up to give a credit card, she can enter it into the system. So if you're coming from the internet, you can't ever get to computer B, but you can get computer A, and once you're on computer A, you can get to computer B. So that would be called island hopping. So you'd send a phishing email to the secretary and get her to run a Java exploit that now lets you run whatever code you want on her computer. So you install a Trojan that allows you to connect to her computer and control it. Then you can, on that computer, you can download PuTTY, or the less interactive version, I think it's called PSSH. It's a command line version of PuTTY for Windows. So it gives you more like the telnet command line, so that when you're running stuff from a command line, it's going back and forth with like a pipe instead of a GUI. Mm-hmm. And then with that way, you can set it up so that you can connect to other computers. Or the Trojan can just act as a proxy by making the TCP connection for you and then just relaying the data out.
Yep.
Interesting example, when I was a student in my high school, I wrote a Trojan in Visual Basic 6, because that's what I did in my spare time.
Awesome.
And it had a bunch of different features. It had a limited set of features that I made a control panel for and gave to the teachers. And so they agreed to allow me to install my Trojan on every computer in the school.
Wow.
So the teacher could go and get a list of the computers in their classroom and click on one and see what was on the screen and monitor the students that way. Basic, simple Trojan spyware type thing. What they didn't seem to grasp is that when I built it, I would have built a much bigger control panel with many, many more options for my use. The problem was they had NAT to get out to the internet, and so there's no way for me at home to connect in and control a computer at the school, after school and things like that. So I got them to let me install a server. So I wrote this little server app that got deployed in the math department office, and all the computers in the high school would connect to that server. And then that server would make a backwards tunnel out to my house based on a DynDNS hostname. And then so I would run a proxy on my computer, and every computer in the high school would connect to the server at the high school, and the connection between those two would allow me to say, hey, I want to talk to the computer in the math lab, and I'd be able to control it from home.
Awesome.
That's a little bit of like backwards island hopping.
So I would be hired to come in and do penetration testing. So I would have network level access on the LAN, but I wouldn't have any administrative level access. And I had this client who they decided to run their website there at their office, but they had it within a DMZ because it contained credit card information and stuff like that. They wanted to have it protected. And the way you would manage this website, because I had a whole back-end CMS, so that way staff members could put new images on the website and things like new promo packages and stuff like that. Well, they would lock it down by the firewall. They'd say only 192.168.0.25 can access that CMS management page. And I didn't know which machine it was. So through network sniffing, I eventually saw that one computer on the LAN, 0.25, was talking to an IP on the firewall, and I figured out that must be the DMZ IP address. So then using Metasploit and Nessus, I scanned this machine. I found a vulnerability that was on this computer. I think this must have been Windows 7, maybe pre-SP1. Can't remember, it was a little while ago. And Metasploit, once I knew the vulnerability, you go into Metasploit, it's just like a menu of options that you want to throw at a computer. And the one I decided to exploit, it included a VNC server. And so I pushed that out to the machine. It executed the VNC server on the Windows desktop. I got that person's screen, and I was right there at their computer. And then from that computer, I was able to hop to that web server that was otherwise locked down by firewall rules, and then I owned the web server. And so at first, I was getting just that computer, and then the end result was that web server. And that was a minor version of island hopping. But, we've been talking a lot about this Target story, and that's a great example of island hopping.
But the island hopping, none of the computers necessarily have to be exposed to the internet per se, right? Say it's a much more secure company in our island hopping example, the credit card server is on a completely separate network. Like it's isolated. It doesn't have a network connection at all. It's just standalone by itself. Say it stores something other than just credit cards or something. And the secretary's computer, you can't reach over the internet. But if you can email the secretary a phishing email and she gets it and clicks it and opens it, you can install the exploit on her computer that instead of opening a port and waiting for you to connect in, which you won't be able to do because of the firewall, it makes an outbound connection periodically, say, on port 80. So it looks like regular web traffic, except for it's going to a command and control server you have or an exploited server that you took over from somebody else and are doing something quietly so they won't notice. And now you have this reverse tunnel to be able to access the secretary's computer.
Yeah.
And you install a virus so that every time she plugs in a USB stick, it infects it. So then she takes that USB stick out of her computer and walks over and plugs it into this computer that's not online at all. And now you can exploit that computer, get data off of it, and copy it back to the USB stick. And then she takes the USB stick back to her computer, and then you can offload it and send it to yourself.
I could also picture, if you just infected somebody's computer, and Outlook is such a common target, and every time they wrote an email, it included an attachment. And that attachment was malware, and maybe 1 in 30 people would run that attachment, and then they would become infected, and eventually you'd piece together a network of infected users.
That's how they attacked the Financial Times and The Onion, right? They sent really low-end phishing schemes to everybody at The Onion, or they tried to exclude people in the IT department, but they sent it out. And then one silly person accepted it and ran the virus, Then they use their address book and the email account of the person who got infected to send a much better, more convincing looking phishing attempt, so that it legitimately came from a person that worked at The Onion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get an email with an attachment from someone you know, and it's something you're expecting you might get, you're much more likely to open it than if it's just some random spam off the internet.
And like a lot of times built-in email client security, if it's somebody in your address book, or in the case of Outlook, if it's somebody in your organization, there's a different set of security policies, like JavaScript in the email might be executed, not anymore, but back in the day, and sometimes still.
Or just allow attachments versus not.
Yeah. So island hopping can be a lot of things, but it's really just about utilizing an exploit on a lower end device and then using that to then get to a higher end device and then potentially even a higher end device, and from there on and there on. And you can do the same thing with privilege escalation. It doesn't have to be physical compromises. It can be you get in with an account that has one certain level of permissions and you use that to either adjust the permissions or get to another account, etc.
Yeah, it just means moving sideways through the network to eventually find a host that you can then do something more on.
Yeah, and a lot of times, the original, when it's remote attacks, I find, a lot of times, especially in these stories, it's the monitoring systems. It's the HVAC vendor. It's the Nagios box that has firewall.
It's the things people forgot to think about.
Yeah, it could be, it could be the syslog server, right? I mean, it's like all this crazy stuff that, yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a set it and forget it appliance that ends up, or print servers, right? Print servers. We've even seen those HP Genterex.
In the printer. It's not even a print server. It's just the printer happens to run Linux, and bad things happen.
All right, next question comes in from Nick, and he's got something that's probably on a few folks' mind out there. He's got a career change on the brain. He says, "Hi, Chris and Alan. I'm currently looking at a career change as I'm very interested in pursuing network and system administration's BS, in network and systems administration. Yep. While the idea sounds amazing to me now, I was wondering if you could talk to me about this career path, highs and lows. Should I follow this dream? Is there a better direction to go? Thanks, guys, and keep up the great work." Wow, so he wants us to dump on it and give him the honest truth a little bit.
Right. Well, first of all, what is he coming from is kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
Whether,
That's true.
But a lot of it comes down to how much do you like it? You have to really like it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the kind of person that when I'm having some problem with the computer, I can't stop until I fix
fixed?
it.
Yeah.
I gotta keep. I think I work all night. And,
Totally.
Or it's like, for me, like the most fun ever is a brand new server and installing all the software, or like a whole bunch of computers and getting them to work together just the way
figuring
I
out
want.
a little solution to set them all up. And,
And it's just.
That is a lot of fun.
So I like, setting up new servers is the thing I like the most, and so at Scale Engine, having to do that all the time is great. it's like I love my day job.
So that would be a good test right there if you enjoy that.
Basically, I found in IT there are two type of people. There's the type of people that work on the computer all day at work and go home and don't want to touch a computer. And there's the type of people that work on a computer all day and they go home and they get back on the computer.
Yeah, and I usually find those are the people that have a little more drive, usually come up with a little more solutions because they're just in it all the time.
You have the worker drones and then you have the inventors, kind of.
Yeah, and so...
It's like, I understand, I'm not saying the people that work all day on the computer and go home and want to do something else are bad or wrong or something.
Right.
They're just not like me.
It can, if you go work for a company too, a corporation, it can be high stress because they'll come to you and say, "Well, look, we can't process any orders until you get the system online. This is costing us thousands of dollars. You've got to get this running. We can't run like this. We have customers calling us and they're angry. Fix it. Yeah. So you got to be able to kind of handle those kind of pressure.
But at the same time, we're a two-person company. When there's something goes wrong, I have to do it.
Yeah.
It means I'm working all the time. If I worked at the college as in the IT department, I work 9 to 5. When I come home, I switch off. I don't nothing to do with the college. They're done, and I can still work on the computer and do my own thing. Yeah. But the advantage to a big corporation is that you're just one of many, and you can switch it off.
You kind of get your own creative time at home.
Yeah, you can stop working easily. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're doing something yourself, like as being a consultant, you're kind of at
always
the whim
on.
of everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you never get to stop working.
When he says he's going for a BS, I usually think that means he's trying to, get something
he's
good for
go
a
to
resume.
school and
So probably wants to get a desk job.
So if you're getting into computer science because you think you're going to make a lot of money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you don't love it, you should do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
because it can if you don't like it, it's not fun.
I'll tell you one thing that I think maybe I take for granted about the field is how fortunate we are that it is not boring. Like,
Yes.
you know, there's some fields people become experts on, and then that industry is pretty well established, and it doesn't really change much over
Yep.
maybe a 20-year career.
Yeah.
That seems like that would be a little bit of a snoozer.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
there's some advantages there if you like continual challenges, but it also means you got to be willing to always be spending your late nights or your extra time learning, trying new
Yeah.
things, going outside the box, and
because sometimes you work at corporate IT and you don't, right? You just get stuck in the right. All you're doing is if you're just doing desktop support for Windows XP and then Windows 7 or whatever,
yeah,
it doesn't seem like anything ever changes.
yeah.
But
Like,
at some point you're going to find out all of a sudden all your skills are dated and you can't get a job somewhere else because you've atrophied.
Gatorbite in the chat room says, working on the computer is never work. It's fun, which is why when I get home, the first thing I do is fire up the computer.
My computer doesn't turn off.
Thanks everyone for tuning in this week's episode of TechSnap, and thank you for submitting your best of submissions. I want to give you a heads up. We might be doing some feed management over the holiday break, so if you have any troubles with that, go back to the website, jupiterbroadcasting.com, and click on the latest episode of TechSnap, or look on the RSS feed sidebar. We'll be shoring those up, doing some in-house maintenance and cleaning things up and standardizing across the board. There's a possibility if you have a really old feed of TechSnap, you might have problems. If that happens to you, if you notice it gets stale, because we never miss an episode, so it's pretty safe to assume it's the RSS feed, just go over to the site and be sure to grab the latest one. Also, I want to plug our subreddit, techsnap.reddit.com. You can go there and make this show better, engage with the community, submit questions or stories you'd like to see have us discussed, or go to the contact page, jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. And last but not least, join us live. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to find out when we're live. Wow, that's a heck of a lot of URLs, but it's worth it. We're worth it, and you're worth it. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSnap. We'll see you right back here next week.